Family finally found book 2, What's in a Name? Maddie's point of view.
There are so many conflicting thoughts and emotions swirling around my head right now. I'm almost dizzy. I feel angry. I feel jealous. I feel bitter. I feel petty. I feel hurt. No, I feel very hurt. Why? Well, let's rewind, shall we? Tom and I had just taken the boys to get ice cream after a mostly disastrous attempt at teaching Knuckles and Tails baseball. We hadn't gotten 5 minutes into the game when Knuckles pulled a power move and smashed the ball into the next county. Seriously, I saw on the news the next day that some poor guy's barn, about 10 miles away, had a huge new hole thanks to some unknown object moving at ballistic speeds. My guess is the Echinus blow tore the baseball apart and it couldn't be identified in the wreckage. Anyway, since our only ball was missing in action, we headed out for some ice cream. All's well. The boys are having a blast. Then Tom pulls me aside to tell me that Sonic had called him Dad right before we left the park. Admit, I was thrilled. We've been acting as his parental figures for over 8 months up to that point, and even though we all referred to ourselves as a family, I don't think he really thought too deeply about it. He kept insisting we were just his friends. Until that moment when Robotnik nearly killed us. I really think that's when things changed for him. And I honestly figured he'd call Tom Dad before he called me Mom. He had bonded so thoroughly with Tom, it was just a given. But I couldn't wait to hear him call me Mom, officially. So I waited at the ice cream place. He was having too much fun with his new friends and didn't pay much attention to us. Fine, understandable. We came home and it was a circus getting everyone cleaned up and calmed down enough to get ready for bed. Still no Mom, okay. Evenings around here are pretty crazy sometimes, what with 3 super-powered boys, 2 of whom were still new to not only Earth, but also our little family and routines. When bedtime came, I made sure to get Tails and Knuckles settled before going to Sonic. Wanted to have a nice quiet moment when he dropped them word on me for the first time. A nice note to end a nice day on? Right. I get the blue boy all tucked in, give him a kiss on his forehead, and tell him good night. What does he say back?
Night, Maddie.
I'm sure I confused him because I sat stock still for a few seconds after that, as what he said sank in. Maddie, not exactly the word I was hoping for. When I regained control of my brain, I gave him as good a smile as I could muster and wandered downstairs. Tom noticed my mood and never could hide my feelings from him, and asked about it, so I told him. He gave me one of his smiles that said,
Is thou?
And explained that Sonic had called him Donut Lord a little earlier.
He's just trying out, baby, and how it feels in his tongue. Hurts enough, and he's ready.
And that was that. We went to bed and I tried to put it all out of my mind. Sonic could be complicated, especially when it came to certain things. Maybe this was one of those things. It made sense. Except he didn't say it the next day, either. Tom got at least half a dozen dads, but every time the boy addressed me, it was either my name or the nickname he had given me before we met, Pretzel Lady. Logically, I know I shouldn't be upset about this. It's just a name, a different title to dress someone. Him calling me or not calling me Mom technically doesn't change anything between us. We still have our little rituals. He'll come in and try to snack on the ingredients while I make supper as we talk about our days. I'll warm up a fresh pair of socks in the drawer while he's taking a bath, because I know he likes them toasty. He'll snuggle up next to me as we watch a movie, sometimes falling asleep if the movie isn't a fast-paced action flick. I'll head upstairs to check on him one last time before heading to bed myself. Everything's exactly the same as it was before he called Tom Dad. But except, it isn't. And it's me that's making it weird.
Maddie heaved a sigh and rubbed her eyes. Journaling always helped her sort through her thoughts whenever she was upset. But staring at the laptop screen could dry her eyes out something fierce. Sounds from the TV in the living room downstairs floated up. Explosions, gunfire, and a high-energy soundtrack. The boys were watching another shoot-'em-up action movie, which had been a big hit with the 2 newcomers to the family. Tails loved when there were sci-fi-ish gadgets in them, and Knuckles would rate the hero's performance based on his own experience as a warrior. She would usually be down there, watching right along with them. Tonight she had bowed out, blaming a head itch. Truthfully, she didn't trust herself around Sonic or Tom. Watching them interact made her bitter, especially if Sonic said the word. She didn't want to run the risk of snapping at two of the most important people in her life, just because she was jealous. She read over what she had written so far, and returned her fingers to the keys.
Things feel different now. It used to feel like we were all one team, meshing together and moving along like a well-oiled machine. Now I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. Sonic has pretty much fully embraced Tom as his father, yet I feel like just the lady Tom's married to. I feel walls going up, and this time it's not Sonic who's constructing them. It's me. I feel myself doing it, and as much as it bothers me, I can't stop. I feel, well, betrayed seems too strong a word, but that's kind of how it feels. This boy I've cared for and loathed as my own practically since that night on Main Street does not see me as his mother. Saying it out loud or typing it out, as it were, makes me feel petty. I'm not his mother, he's bonded with Tom, and deep interpersonal relationships are hard and confusing for him in the best of times. Why am I holding it against him that he apparently isn't comfortable calling me Mom? It's selfish and petty, and I just can't help it. I feel like a terrible person. Sonic's had so much hardship in his young life. He grew all alone, on a world he doesn't belong to, and was nearly killed by that crazy Robotnik voice. But he always held a positive attitude and did the right thing, no matter how hard it was. And I loathe him so much for that courage. He's an amazing little guy. But I can't deny the fact that he has seemingly wholeheartedly accepted Tom as his family, and not me. Maybe that's an oversimplification. Maybe that's completely inaccurate. Maybe I'm blowing this whole thing out of proportion and making myself crazy over something that's all in my head. I don't know. What I do know is it's been 3 days since we went out for ice cream and he has not called me Mom once.
A soft knock on the bedroom door drew Maddie out of her writing. She shook off the emotions that had been dredged up and closed the lid of the laptop before answering.
Who is it?
The door opened a sliver.
It's Sonic.
Sonic said, his little black nose poking into the room.
Can I come in?
Maddie took a deep breath before letting it out slowly.
Sure, Sonic, come on in.
The door opened fully and the little blue hedgehog stepped into the room. He gave her a small smile.
Feeling any better? We miss you downstairs.
She returned his smile with one she hoped looked natural.
Now I think I'll stay up here, getting some work done as the Advil works on my head itch.
He stood silently for a second, hand gripping the doorknob tightly. The smile dropped from his face, his brow furrowed.
Oh, okay.
He turned and walked out into the hallway, pulling the door after him. Guilt joined the jumble of emotions already in Maddie's head. Great. A second later, before the bedroom door had a chance to close completely, it opened again. A now angry hedgehog moved back into the room, slamming the door behind him.
You know what's not okay?
He said, glaring at the woman on the bed.
You've been acting weird around me for the past couple days. I tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore. What's going on?
Maddie was careful to keep her face neutral.
Sonic, I just haven't been feeling very well, that's all.
That's a lie, and we both know it.
He said, pointing an accusatory finger at her.
When you're sick, you camp out on the couch and watch How to Train Your Dragon on endless repeat until you feel better.
Maddie raised her eyebrows. Kid was observant.
And you do work stuff downstairs at the kitchen, Aisland.
He continued, walking toward the bed.
You only sit on your laptop up here when Donut Dork sets you off.
Very observant.
No, I know you're not angry at him because he's not moping around downstairs. And you're not angry at Nux or Tails because you smiled and joked around with them at supper, which you don't do if you're angry at that person.
Man, he's good.
So, by process elimination, the only person left in the house is me.
He said, and in an instant his anger dissolved into concern.
What did...
Sonic.
Maddie started, placing her laptop to the side and sitting up, cross-legged.
I'm not mad at you.
His anger returned and he started counting off on his fingers.
1, you don't joke with me. 2, you didn't warm up my socks last night or the night before. 3, you barely told me good night last night. 4, you're avoiding movie night.
He crossed his arms.
That sounds like you're pretty ticked at me.
Okay, number 1, calm down.
Maddie said, her own anger surfacing. She had fully worked through her feelings regarding this situation, and this confrontation wasn't helping.
Number 2, you are not the only kid in the house anymore. Remember, your friends need more attention and reassurance that they are safe and welcome here. Number 3, I'm not the only adult in this house, am I? Why don't you ask them to warm your socks?
Because that's our thing.
Sonic cried, gesturing between himself and Maddie.
I go watch baseball practice and do other guy stuff with Dad, and do the nice little homie things with you.
He dropped his shoulders.
I thought you liked that stuff too.
I did.
Maddie said, mentally holding her tongue at the sound of the D word from his mouth. Hearing it again was like a knife in the heart.
Did.
The hedgehog asked, eyebrow raised.
Don't you like it anymore?
That's not what I meant.
She said, rubbing her temple. She really was developing a head itchy at this point.
You are taking things out of context.
How about you put them into context for me? I'm hearing a lot of words that aren't telling me what I want to know. Just tell me why you're mad at me.
Sonic, I'm not.
Stop lying to me. I can tell you're mad, so just tell me why.
Why don't you go ask your father?
Maddie yelled, and Sonic jerked back in surprise.
He's so special to you and has all the dad wisdom. Why don't you go ask him?
The boy stood where he was for a moment, staring at her wide-eyed. Maddie's stomach dropped. She had been angry with him before, hedgehog or not. He was still a kid and could push buttons and test boundaries like any other. But she had never raised her voice to him with this level of intensity, with this much venom. Now she felt even more petty and guilty. She sighed, propped her elbows on her knees and dropped her head into her hands. Tears loomed, but she wouldn't allow them to fall. What a sorry excuse for a mother figure she was. She got herself all bent out of shape over a word, and now screamed at her boy, who just wanted an honest answer for her recent cold behavior toward him. All for a single, stupid word. In the corner of her eye, she saw movement to her left.
You're special to me.
Sonic said lightly, placing a gentle touch on her arm.
Whatever I did wrong, I'm really sorry. Please don't be mad at me anymore. Just tell me what started this and I'll never do it again, I promise.
Now the tears leak out. The amount of pain in his voice released them. What a horrible person she was.
Sonic.
She lifted her head to look at him, her voice hardly more than a whisper.
I'm so sorry, sweetie. I haven't been treating you very well lately. You were right. You've done nothing wrong. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry, baby.
The hedgehog stood where he was for a moment, his large green eyes searching her face. Then, seemingly encouraged by the shift in mood, Sonic crawled up onto the bed and sat before her, mirroring her position.
Talk to me.
He said, offering her a small smile. The sight of it made Maddie feel love blossom in her chest, and guilt weigh on her mind.
You've always offered me a shoulder when I needed to talk something out. Now it's my turn.
He lifted his hands.
2 shoulders, no waiting.
She gave him a small smile in return, and wiped the tears from her cheeks. He was such a thoughtful, kind, amazing boy. Her behavior toward him over the past couple of days made her feel like vomiting.
It's stupid, and I feel like a real jerk.
I'm not gonna judge.
He said, holding up a hand.
Well, I mean, I might, because things have been really weird and off around here, and I really want things to go back to normal between us. And
He trailed off, a small blush burning his muzzle.
I miss you.
Well, that certainly made the guilt she felt She dropped her gaze to the hands fiddling in her lap. Silence stretched between them for a few long seconds, before a gloved hand appeared in her vision and took one of her hands.
I'm right here.
He said softly, giving her hand a squeeze.
Talk to me, please.
She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and let it out in a slow, controlled breath.
I noticed you've been calling Tom Dad lately.
The hand on hers clenched lightly.
That's okay, isn't it? I mean, he doesn't mind, right?
She shook her head, her eyes still on the hands in her lap.
He loves it, Sonic. I don't think he realized just how long he'd been waiting to hear it until the other night.
His hand relaxed.
Oh, okay. Good.
He paused.
Does it bother you that I call him Dad?
She bit her lip.
I absolutely loathe that you call him that, honey.
What?
Abort, keep your stupid, petty, bitter jealousy to yourself. Don't unload it on this innocent, sweet kid's head.
But
Don't say it.
why won't you call me Mom?
The gloved hand clenched so tightly on hers it was almost painful. Then it pulled back quickly. Maddie looked up at Sonic and found him trembling, his face a mixture of fear, pain, and sadness.
Sonic?
She reached forward to hold his hand, as he had done with hers.
What's wrong?
He pulled his lips together tightly, forming a thin line in his muzzle. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes.
Honey.
He scrubbed at the tears on his cheeks with the heels of his hands, as though he could stop them through sheer force. Then he cleared his throat.
I don't exactly have the greatest luck with mums, you know.
He said, offering her a shaky smile.
I'm 0 for 2, actually. I don't remember my first mom. She must have died when I was really little, and Longclaw died because of me.
She died protecting you.
Maddie said, cupping his cheek with a hand.
Like any mother would.
Well, the end result is the same. They're both gone. I never had a dad. So it seemed, I done safe, I guess, to say that. There are no memories or baggage attached to that word, but the other one.
He shrugged.
It's scary to even think it again.
Maddie sighed. Theirs was the answer to the question that had been burning in her brain for the better part of a week. The ward was tainted by another aspect of his traumatic childhood, and she had made it worse by being completely petty and selfish about it. She did deserve that tittle after all.
I'm so sorry, baby.
She said, pulling Sonic into her lap, hugging him to her. He went willingly enough, wrapping his arms around her.
I'm sorry I hurt you because I was jealous.
I'm sorry I didn't. I couldn't.
He was crying again, clutching her shirt in his fists and wetting it with his tears.
Hush.
She soothed, stroking his head and combing her fingers through his quills.
Don't be sorry, sweetie. I understand. I do. I was so focused on my own feelings about it I never considered yours. I'm so sorry, my sweet boy.
She kissed his head and held him tight as he sobbed into her chest. Minutes passed, and Sonic slowly calmed. His sobs related to the occasional sniffle. He was in no hurry to leave her lap, and she was in no hurry to let him go. They sat quietly for a few moments, the air between them refreshingly lighter than it had been before.
You weren't mad, were you?
He asked lightly, pulling back to sit more comfortably in her lap.
You were hurt because I didn't.
It doesn't matter now.
She said, offering him a warm, genuine smile.
I was wrong to be so selfish. You're my boy, and I love you so much. That's all that matters.
Maddie wiped at the tears on his cheeks, smoothing the fur that had gotten clumped and waterlogged. Sonic closed his eyes, leaning into her warm hand. He reached up, covered her hand with his, and held it against his cheek.
I'm sorry.
It was hardly more than a whisper.
Don't be. You did nothing wrong.
She turned him
You're my beautiful, wonderful boy, and that's all that matters.
They sat quietly for a while. Maddie held his hands as she cradled him against her. Every so often, she would kiss his forehead. He relaxed in her arms, and he squeezed her hands after every kiss.
You are, you know.
He said softly, nuzzling his head under her chin.
Even if I didn't say it, you always were.
Maddie smiled.
I know, sweetie.
She kissed his forehead once more.
No, it's okay.
Another few minutes passed, and Sonic's breathing deepened. Maddie figured he was falling asleep, and started plotting how to get up and get into bed without disturbing him too much. Maybe she'd just have to wait until Tom came up. Not that she was all too eager to move. It had been a while since she'd had a snuggle session with her blue boy. His hand squeezed hers. She gave a squeeze back, and added a one-arm hug.
I'm really glad you're my mom.
He said, his voice a soft whisper. Maddie bit her lip, tears spilling down her cheeks.
Me too, baby.
She placed another kiss on his forehead.
Me too.
Half an hour later, the movie had ended and the rest of the family made their way upstairs. The bedroom door opened and Tom wandered in, Knuckles and Tails close behind. They found Maddie and Sonic sitting on the bed, cross-legged and chatting joyfully.
There he is.
Tom said, drawing their attention.
We wonder where he disappeared to.
You'll be standing of a highly entertaining movie featuring a large man named Arnold.
Knuckles said, crossing his arms.
He defeated many foes with only his raw strength. It was inspiring to see such battles.
Yeah, it was a little unrealistic in some parts.
Tails said, crawling onto the bed.
But it was fun.
I've seen Commander before.
Sonic said, waving a dismissive hand.
Not Arnold's best work. Now Predator. That's a good one.
That one may be a little much for Tails.
Maddie said, shaking her head.
How about Back to the Future? There's no Arnold, but it's got a scientist who invents a time machine out of a car.
Tails' ears perked.
Really? That sounds cool.
It's cool.
Tom said, lifting the fox cub and hefting him over his shoulder.
But that will have to wait for another night. It's time for bed.
But I'm not even tired.
I suppose it was a different fox that was snoring in my ear for the last 10 minutes of the movie, then.
Knuckles said with a smirk.
I could barely hear the explosions.
The little fox admitted defeat.
Oh man.
I know life is so hard.
Tom said as he walked back toward the door.
I'm gonna get these two upstairs. You guys coming?
In a minute.
Maddie said, smiling. Her husband nodded.
Come on, boys.
He said in a bad Arnold accent, shooing Knuckles out of the room.
Time to brush the teeth in manly ways.
As Tails' laughter floated down the hall, Sonic turned to Maddie. She offered him a small smile.
So, Sonic,
She said, gesturing to each of them.
are we good?
The hedgehog smiled.
We're good.
She smiled wider as he nodded.
Great, in fact.
Maddie reached forward and gently booped his nose with a finger. He chuckled, scooting himself toward the edge of the bed. Before dropping off, he stopped and turned back to throw his arms around her neck.
I love you, Mom.
He whispered, giving her a squeeze.
I'm sorry it took so long to say it.
I love you, sweetie.
She said, giving him a bigger squeeze.
I'm sorry I got so worried about it. I should have just waited until you were ready.
I think I needed a bit of a poke, honestly.
He said, pulling back.
I can be kinda dumb about this family stuff.
Not dumb. You've been through a lot, and this is all new. Totally understandable that it could feel
Doesn't feel weird anymore. I'm glad we talked.
me.
she said, unfolding her legs and throwing them over the edge of the bed.
You're a great kid, and I'm proud to call you mine.
He blushed as he hopped down to the floor.
Oh, come on, Pretzel, well now you're just being mushy.
Oh, you think that's mushy?
She asked, climbing off the bed. She scooped him up into her arms, nozzling his neck and blowing raspberries into his shoulder.
Who's my little blue baby boy?
Another raspberry on his chest.
Who is he you are?
More raspberries, and Sonic was wheezing with laughter.
No, stop.
He cried, laughing and struggling to get down as she walked them to the bathroom.
Dad, help! Mom's going nuts.
Mother and son laughed as they joined the rest of the family to begin the nightly bedtime ritual. The air in the house felt considerably lighter, and a new, stronger connection had formed between the core family unit. And that's what they were now, an actual family. Once Sonic finally admitted it to himself, the dynamics between the three of them slid into place with an almost audible click. Tails and Knuckles felt it too, and they relaxed into the roles of brothers more easily than they had before. All three boys woke to warm, clean socks the next morning, fresh from the dryer.